So let's talk. Let's talk. You saw the title. You saw what this video is about. It's about Toni Kroos. Let's get ready to discuss. Because Toni Kroos, let's be completely honest, right? He's one of those footballers that almost every Bayern fan dislikes. And I might be in a minority, but I don't. Of course, he's annoying because he constantly, every single interview, he talks about Bayern. So obviously, Bayern fans naturally dislike him because of that. But for me, look, I never blamed him for leaving. That's just, it's football. Again, I'm the kind of person that doesn't care if a player leaves or stays. I've got no loyalty to these players, if I'm being completely honest here. And I don't care about his interviews too much because he can say whatever he wants. At the end of the day, Bayern was part of his life. It was part of his career. And if he wants to come constantly, talk about Bayern, and so be it. Let him do what he wants. Now, here's my thing though of Toni Kroos. Because I was having this... I think I actually mentioned this on a video on here before, where I constantly have this thought of like, if you were to make like an all-time Bayern 11, right? I've made an all-time, I think I made it, yeah, I did make a team, like, who would be in my all-time Bayern 11? And I was thinking, like, which midfielders would I put? Now, of course, I put Matthäus in there. I think, I've forgotten who my two midfielders were, but I think I went with a 4-2-3-1, and I think my second midfielder was Effenberg. I think. I think. So if that would be my choice right now, just off the top of my head, would be Effenberg as the Effenberg and Matthäus as like the two midfielders, right? That would put my all-time Bayern 11. And I made this point that Kimmich, by the end of his career, will likely be in that team of that all-time 11. But now I'm thinking about it, because I forgot Toni Kroos, and I was like watching. Hey, let me show you. I was in the middle of like watching something. This Toni Kroos pings are therapeutic, and I was thinking like, how did I? Because there's some Bayern scenes in here, like you've got some Bayern clips in here as well, and I was just thinking like, how did I forget Toni Kroos? Where would I rank him? Like, here's the thing, right? We've had midfielders that are more complete than him. Kimmich, for example, is more complete than him. Schweinsteiger, more complete than him. But when it comes to the long-range passing and the mid-range passing, I think there is nobody in world football that is better than him. I think he might be the best of all time, actually, in fact. The only person I can think of, in terms of like long range and mid range, like not like overall passing range, but just long range and mid range, not short range passing, just long. Keep that in mind, right? The only midfielder that has played for Bayern that I can think of that could, compete with him would be Xabi Alonso. Those are the only two that I can think of that like dominate long range and short range passing. Now, of course, you've got other passers as well, that excel at short range passing, mid range passing, and long range passing. Just to name you a few players here, the likes of Zidane. Obviously, very much well versed in all three areas of those. But I wouldn't say that he's the best at long range passing. Again, I would say it's either Xabi or Kroos. Mid range, I would also say it's those two. But like Zidane obviously excels at short range passing. You've got Mesut Ozil, who I would say excels at short range passing, but really sucks at mid range or long range passing. So I actually thought about this a little bit. And you've got like the likes of Iniesta and Xavi, who I would also say excel at the short range passing, and are okay at mid range and long range passing. All right. Now I'm not saying Toni Kroos is the most. Again, it's not the most complete midfielder. There are plenty of more midfielders that are more complete. But is he underrated? And it's weird for me to say this, with a Bayern shirt on a Bayern channel, being a Bayern fan, and then saying, is Toni Kroos underrated in world football? I'm supposed to hate him. I don't. I personally don't, right? I don't. And the whole reason why he left is because he felt undervalued. But here's the thing, right? Considering that, you really think about it. Considering that, like, this was a kid. Like, this was a footballer that, like, at the age of 17, At the age of 16, actually, at the age of 17, I guess, because that's when he could play. But at the age of 17, he was the most hyped German player he was the most hyped player in Germany that I've ever seen. And I think the only person that really comes close, I had this discussion recently, but I think the only two players that really come close were Mario Götze and Yusufa Moukoko, who had like similar hype to Toni Kroos as a youngster, like before they really made their professional debut, before they really made that professional mark, where like people that didn't even watch football knew about them. And they've never played a single game before, that kind of thing. So I'm just here thinking, this is someone that, like, at 17 years old, I think it was Uli Hoeneß actually, that was like, went on, my memory is terrible, but he went on, what's the Audi talk show called? I forgot what it's called now. But like he said something like back then, because every time because he was 17 back then, Toni Kroos, and he was able to play in the Bundesliga. Every time back then he was like he was asked about Toni Kroos, and he went on that talk show, and he said something along the lines of every single week that you're asking about a 17-year-old. He's 17. He hasn't seen it all. He hasn't done it all. Stop talking about him. And that didn't stop. That didn't stop. Again, the most hyped player I think I've ever seen. The most hyped youngster I think I've ever seen in German football. And for good reason, obviously. We saw that, him and Vidal, they basically completely destroyed. Okay, maybe that's a bit of a stretch. But they dominate. Okay, that's maybe another bit of a stretch. They did really well in the Bundesliga for Leverkusen, all right? But when we sent him out on loan. But, like, you really think about it, it's like, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense why like this kid, who was hyped up so much, is now a little bit cocky. Let's call it cocky. He's not quite arrogant. He's not on my level yet, but like he's quite, he's quite cocky, right? Just a little bit, but for the good reason. For good reason. Now, of course, Bayern fans will say Kimmich, right? If I were to say, like, who would you put in your all-time 11? Or some you may say Schweinsteiger, which I don't think at all, if I'm being completely honest. In my opinion, you can't put someone like the all-time midfielder, all-time Bayern midfielder, or even all-time Germany midfielder list, with somebody that, like, for the majority of their career, well, okay, maybe not majority of their career, but for a large part of their career played as a winger. And you could, of course, people will say, well, Kimmich, he played as a centre-back, and then he played as a right-back, isn't that the same thing? But Kimmich is a born and bred midfielder. He studied being a midfielder, and then he played as a centre-back under Pep, because we didn't have space in midfield, and we had so many injuries in defence. So it was kind of a necessity, and then he kind of was so good at right-back that, like, that's for you a right-back, okay, but he's a midfielder. Don't get that twisted, right? And I just think Schweinsteiger, yes, we're not looking back nostalgic, of course there are aspects to it we could just be like, yeah, you know what, amazing, the best in the world, but like if we're looking at it realistically, like, perhaps not. Perhaps not, alright? So, I'm honestly thinking, I'm sat here thinking, like, that's the reason why I'm making this video, because I'm just thinking. So this one might seem a little bit aimless, honestly, but like, how good... And, okay, before I continue, I know some people may make the argument, well, Toni Kroos left in 2014. He didn't hit his peak by then. Some may say that. And he had his best year at Real Madrid. Some may say that. That's a valid argument, I would say. But in terms of just, like, players that played at Bayern, would you put him in your all-time 11? I'm just sat here thinking, I'm like... I think I would. I honestly think I would. Because, like, again, I think Kimmich, by the end of his career, will be in the all-time 11. I think he'll be next to Matthäus. But when you look at it, like, carefully, should Toni Kroos be there instead of Kimmich in the future? I guess by the end of their career. Is he undervalued? Underrated? Won the World Cup. Won how many Champions League did he win? Too many. Too many. Basically, he was the starter in 2013 until he got injured against Juventus. And then, Robin came in to kind of fill his spot. But he was the starter, Difficult to think about, honestly. Difficult. I don't know. When you have a player that's won the Champions League, that's won the Champions League in 2013, you could also make the argument that he made the assist for Müller in the 2012. Okay, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, I know, but you could make that argument, all right? Showed up in big games. 2013, Champions League in 2013, won the World Cup in 2014. My memory is terrible. 2015, Barcelona won. 2016, who won 2016? Was it Real Madrid? Real Madrid, Barcelona. Did Real Madrid win again in 2016? 2016, I think Real Madrid. Yeah, it was. It was Atletico versus Real Madrid. Was it? Yeah, it was Atletico versus Real Madrid because we went out to Atletico in 2015. So it had to have been Real Madrid because no other team is going to beat Atletico Madrid in the final. So it had to be Real Madrid. 2016, won the Champions League with Real Madrid. 2017, won the Champions League with Real Madrid. 2018, won the Champions League with Real Madrid. My goodness. My goodness. That's what we call a dynasty. They were never, I feel like, honestly, to this day, I don't feel like they were ever the best team. But that's the thing with Real Madrid. They have this European pedigree that only a few teams in the world have. The few teams, I mean Bayern as well. Honestly, Bayern, Liverpool, and Real Madrid are the only teams that I would say have the European pedigree. Well, they can be terrible. They can be atrocious, but they'll still beat you. They could have the worst season ever, but the second they hear that these are the champions, it's suddenly a different level. It's suddenly a different level, a different pedigree, just a different sport, and suddenly they're playing at a completely different level. And then 2019, you've got Liverpool. 2020, you've got us. Okay, cool. And then 2021, you've got us again. 2022, you've got us again. 2023, you've got us again. But obviously, Toni Kroos is going to win the 2021 Euros. He's going to win the 2022 World Cup. Nice. Nice. I still need to get myself the Götze 2014 World Cup shirt. I got the shirt with the World Cup emblem, but I never got it printed, so that's the issue. Oh well. Nothing I can do about that now, I guess. Yeah, I mean, look. The dude has won 4 Champions Leagues, alright? That alone, the dude has won 4 Champions League in a midfield duo/trio that has dominated world football, right? So, you can't really say much more than that. I don't ever really think about it. Kimmich hasn't won the World Cup. Did Kimmich win the Confederations Cup? I think he did. Was Toni Kroos part of the Confederations? My goodness. People say, talent plays. Your ability matters, but trophies matter as much as just as well. The way I always look at things is how good were you compared to your peers. That's always a very important question to ask. How good were you compared to your peers? That's why someone like Los Mateos. Number one for me. Number one. Number one place in that all-time 11. That's why someone like Boateng is in my all-time 11. Because Boateng during the 2014, since Pep arrived, that was 3 years under Pep. There was a great argument to be made that Boateng was the best central defender in world football during those 3 years. And that by itself counts for a lot, in my opinion. If you're considered the best in your position for a couple of years, then that by itself counts a lot. Now, of course, Toni Kroos was never that for, but he was never rated that highly. Okay, after the Arsenal game, he was suddenly rated, but that's just the Premier League fans. But he was never rated that highly, as a top 3, midfielders in world football, until he left Real Madrid. So would it be fair to put him in all-time Bayern 11? Perhaps based on performance, no, based on legacy. his career legacy without it being necessarily a Bayern, but just his career legacy, perhaps. Perhaps. I honestly feel just thinking about it now. Just thinking about it now. I feel like Kimmich needs to win a World Cup. And I'm not saying that because I want another World Cup, alright? Usually, you know, we all know how it goes. 24 years, alright? 24 years, that's usually how long it takes for Germany to win another World Cup. 54, 74, 92, 2014. Okay, so 54, 54, 74, so that's 20 years. 90, okay, maybe not quite, okay. But then you've got 2014. Let's make it 2022. Let's make it 2022. After that disaster that was 2018, let's make it 2022. I feel like honestly, Kimmich has to win either another 3 Champions League with Bayern. I mean, I'd welcome it. I'd welcome it. Or he has to win a World Cup to be only over Toni Kroos. Alright. It's difficult for me to say that because Toni Kroos didn't have his best years at Bayern. He had amazing years at Bayern, but he didn't have his best years at Bayern. So it's almost kind of unfair. But I'm just looking at like the player by itself, basically. Like just at the player, not like at the player at a certain club. Just the player. If he played at Bayern, then I'll consider his whole career as if it were at Bayern. As if. Toni Kroos is 31. He'll still have 3 years, 3 years at minimum at a top level. So he could win. If he wins, if the Germany team wins the Euros and the World Cup, he'll be a major part of it. It's gonna be almost impossible for Kimmich to catch up. Honestly, if I'm being completely honest, Kimmich is more complete, and he's got a good long range range. He's got a good long range range. He's got a good long range pass. He's got a good long range. He's got a good mid range pass. He's got a good short range pass. The reason why Kimmich is obviously more complete is because he's defensively a lot better. Offensively, he's a lot better. And he's well rounded in all 3 aspects of what I would call passing, which is short range, mid-range and long range. Now, of course, there are multiple facets inside those, multiple categories inside those ranges. You've got the soft long range, you've got the hard long range, you've got the soft mid-range, you've got the hard long range, and you've got the soft short range and the hard short range. But, for example, Xavi was the king of the soft short range, but I wouldn't say it was that great at the hard short range. And Kimmich is kind of like, he's great at everything. But I wouldn't say there's necessarily one thing that he excels at. Whereas Toni Kroos, he's very specific. He's the master of the soft long range and the hard long range, and the soft mid range and the hard mid range pass. But he lacks in those other aspects. But I still think if I were to be completely honest, and it's kind of weird because like I don't usually have favorites in football, but as I've said this a few times this season, for some reason I really like how Kimmich and Müller are playing, and for some reason they're now becoming my favorites, which I thought was impossible. But like after Lahm left, I was like, no. It's over. it's over. No more favorites. No more favorites. After Lahm, Ribéry, and Robin kind of just dipped, I was like, okay, no more favorites. I didn't have any favorites. But now I'm slowly starting to get favorite players again, which is strange, considering they've not. Okay, they've played well, but they've not like done anything that I would consider like, ooh, like, I like that. Like with Lam, it was pretty obvious. The way like his whole book and the whole controversy with his book and the interviews that followed, and ultimately the changes it brought, and the way he treated Ballack, which I always liked. Right? I know people hate him for it, but I always liked how he essentially, Ballack got injured, and Lam was the captain for Germany, and Lam was like, I'm not giving him the captaincy back. You can forget that. And Ballack was like, what? Everyone else was like, what? But I like that. He's like, no, I'm not. He's not getting it back. He can forget that captaincy. I like that. That little bit of spunk, that little bit of arrogance. I quite like that. And obviously the whole book controversy, where his book essentially is the reason why for me, I 100% believe that his book is the reason we're so successful today. Him basically saying that the management has no idea how to make transfers. They only sign big names, not players that necessarily, fit the team. How he also says that Klinsmann had absolutely no idea about tactics, all of that, and there is no concept behind the club, that we just get one manager and then another manager without a clear structure, without a clear plan, and then suddenly, the second he says that, right, a few years down the lane, Rummenigge comes down, he's like, you know what, we kind of want to build a style of football. Same thing that Lam criticized the management for, that there was always like contrasting styles. Suddenly Rummenigge comes out, was like, we want to build a style of football. We first had it with Van Gaal, where it was very much possession based, and then we've had it with Joop, that still had that possession based style, but with a lot more verticality. And now with Pep, we kind of want to evolve that too. Yeah, suddenly the style of football is important. Suddenly, like again, for me, Lam, it became a favorite. Just based on that, honestly, and the consistency. You all know how I dig consistency. Consistency to me is the most important part in world football. That's why Lam became my favourite. Robin Ribery. Honestly, Ribery was like the revival. It was a revival of Bayern from like the banter era to like what I would consider the current era, which is the golden era, the platinum era of the last 15 years or so. Okay, maybe not quite that long. It will be 15 years soon. My goodness, years do fly. But like it kind of like moved over from like that banterous era where we would get knocked out by some banter clubs to now we're like, okay, you want to win the Champions League, you kind of have to beat us now. You're like to that stage where we're like always competing, we're always in it with a shout. So I kind of like think that Ribery was like the start of all that. I mean, I've got Robin. I didn't even like Robin until he missed the penalty. Which is odd, I know. But when he missed the penalty against Chelsea, that's when I started liking him. Like I thought I was like neutral on him, like I am with most players nowadays. But like once he missed that penalty, and the Germany versus Holland game that happened at the Allianz Arena like a few weeks later, I think it was like 2 weeks later or so after that final against Chelsea, and all the fans were booing him. The Bayern fans, let's not kid ourselves, the Bayern fans in that Germany game were booing him. And there was a lot of like rumors about, is he going to leave? Is he going to stay? So on and so forth. And he was just like, yeah, I'm staying. And then you saw that vengeance and he won the Champions League. I was like, yeah. That's the kind of that's the attitude I need, because when your own fans are, and I always criticize Real Madrid for, like I always say, the only club in world football that I actually hate, it's not Chelsea, it's not PSG, it's not any of these all clubs, Manchester City, it's none of that. The only club that I dislike, I also respect, granted, but I dislike, is Real Madrid, and that is because of how they treated their legends, right? For example, Iker Casillas, that never sat right with me. And I'd be very hypocritical to not call Bayern out for that. The way the Bayern fans treated Arjen Robben. Now, I will also say that for as many people that were criticizing him back then, there were equally as many fans, giving him praise. Like every time he was being whistled or whatnot or booed by a section of the fan group, you'd have the other fan group just be like, Arjen Robben. So that kind of like. It wasn't as bad, alright? It wasn't as bad as like just being shafted completely like Iker Casillas kind of was. And luckily it all had a happy ending. But yeah. That was a rough year for Robin, honestly. It wasn't just a penalty. I know that's obviously the thing that we always like look back on, but obviously it was the game against Dortmund as well. which essentially meant that we were second in the league because we lost that game against Dortmund, where, you know, Arjen Robben, I think it was Lewandowski, he plays Lewandowski on after the corner where Lewandowski does the back heel for Dortmund and wins them the league. But like obviously Arjen Robben kept him on, and so that was a terrible year, you know. And then he goes on to miss the penalty in the Champions League final. Terrible year for him, but then he just comes up with revenge, and that's why it's these kind of it's character that I like. If you can't tell, Ribery is the exception here, right? Because Lam character, he may not show, Lam didn't show it on the pitch, granted, but he had character to call out the management, to call out the bosses that you're playing for in a book. It's like ooh, to call out your manager, ooh, to say to the captain Ballack, who's loved by this whole country and everything, and you're just like, I ain't giving you the captaincy back, bro. If you want that captaincy, you gotta fight for it, bro. Like, spunk. With Robin, you had the whole, okay, I'm gonna show them that attitude. It was more the attitude to be like, nah, it's not bringing me down. I'm coming back up. You know what they say? A wounded animal is the most dangerous. The wounded predator is the most dangerous. That was Arjen Robben. And with Ribery, it was just like because he signaled a change. That's really how it feels like. But like again, this video is about Toni Kroos. I kind of deviated as I always do, but let me know. Actually, no, don't let me know, because you're gonna be biased. I know you. You're right there watching. You're gonna be biased. You're gonna say, Toni Kroos, get this road man out the way. Get this waste man out the way, man. Useless. You'll be like, nah, man. Kimi, Schweinsteiger. You know, you'll name me over 5 players. Rudi, Rode, and I'm like, bro, come on. Because we're all creatures that are biased, right? It's a fact. We're all biased at the end of the day. We're all biased, but I kind of look at it. I try and look at things objectively, and I'm always right. So it doesn't matter what you say, because I'm right. No, but truly, do let me know what you think about Toni Kroos. Like, in a Bayern all-time 11, does he get into your midfield? If you just look at his career, I know it wasn't all at Bayern, but if you just look at his career, would he make it in there? Let me know. Besides that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see all of you in the next one, everyone. Until then, have a nice day, peace out, and as always,